Have you ever been in such a hunger that you think that you are eating yourself? What is the trick in doing the intermittent fasting in the right way and not just eating your muscle and eating all the hormonal patterns that are developing inside of you? In this episode, I'm going to deconstruct the scientific way and the new breakthroughs that have been discovered in the science of fasting and how these changes affect hormonal balance specifically for women, that they are suffering from these strategies if they don't apply them correctly. So I'm going to explain all of these, let's say, hidden mechanisms within our body and what are the main differences between male and females. So, is it time for you to start reprogramming your body so that you can really look younger and feel with more energy? This is the main takeaway of introducing fasting into your life. You are really integrating a protocol of steps that I can help you more if you um, schedule a consultation with me. So, in this precision cellular reprogramming and chronobiology, what is happening is that these fasting periods are a chronobiological intervention designed to restore the metabolic flexibility that your body can have and drive this proteostasis, so the balance of your proteins and also the depletion of the fat cells. And in addition to that, you will have much more insulin sensitivity and cognition expansion, let's say. So success relies on timing, not just on restriction. So it is not just a restrictive program or a restrictive protocol. It is also a freedom protocol that is going to give you a switch in the way you are using your fuels of your system. So let's start with the first graphic. The 24-hour metabolic switch is the most advanced way that we have now uh, arrived to the point where we know what is happening in this curve, where we surpass the 18 hours and we start changing the fuel utilization towards beta hydroxybutyrate, which is a ketone body, and we are producing more ketone bodies. What are these ketone bodies? They are a subproduct of the depletion of your lipid metabolism. So you are burning fat the more you are producing these ketone bodies. By feeding your brain with ketone bodies and also feeding your muscles with ketone body, you are giving them high quality fuel instead of just this traditional sugar. In the window of 12 to 16 hours, there is a transition zone that you can realize in the cross path between these two graphics, between the blue one and the red one. So the first thing that happens when we are fasting is that we consume the glycogen that is in our liver, and we consume more or less 400 to 500 grams of this glycogen when we are under these hours of fasting. This is the consumption of just your carbohydrates, because glycogen is the way that our body stores carbohydrates, so that when you have this reserve that needs to be used, you can have that fuel. Well, what happens when you deplete all the glycogen or these 400, 500 grams? Well, then your curve of beta hydroxybutyrate, which comes from the depletion of the metabolism of fats, will start racing. By the time you are in 18 hours of 18 and a half, 19, 20, 21, and 24, you arrive to the most amount of ketone bodies that are going to feed your brain and that are going to feed your muscles. When you cross over that point, hepatic glycogen is exhausted and it's triggering deep nutritional ketosis. And that is good for your body. That is good for your brain because you are cleaning your system. I will talk about how many days you can implement this 24-hour metabolic switch, and I will speak more about the differences. So, what is happening in your metabolism and what is happening in your cells? How are you cleaning your system? Well, turns out that we have some mechanisms that activate autophagy, and the kinetics or the speed and the regulation of this speed of autophagy has to do with the depth of repair. So when you are in the 16-hour window, the initial induction, you will have an early neuronal cleaning that is beginning, and you will start signaling these complex names, but don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to what they do. This mTOR pathway, it's going to signal a reduction in this pathway that is interfering with the repairment process. So there is now a modest systemic repair in your cells. This repair process functions as a very intelligent and, let's say, holistic mechanism of your body, because your body knows that many cells are getting into the stage where they can be repaired, where they can sometimes be depleted because they are too old, and this is the cleaning stage. By doing these fasting periods, you are allowing and boosting this speed of cleaning, and you are producing more complexes that are showing that the protein mechanism of your body, the protein meaning you are building muscle, not depleting the muscle, is being created. So what happens in the 24 hours, which is this gold standard, and it shouldn't be, and this is important that you pay attention, you shouldn't do this 24-hour fasting so often, because what you are going to cause is a really low depletion of energy, more if you are training or more if you are in a stressful job. So pay attention to these little details, but they are extremely important. So in the systemic autophagy that is being accelerated in these 24 hours, it is marked by these compounds that are called LC3-1 and LC3-2 and all of these. The gold standard is that you will have more LC3-1 complexes. What does this mean? This means that what you are doing in your body is being reflected in the depletion of these cells that need to be repaired, or the cells that are already senescent, old, let's say, and they need to be taken away and used the components of those cells, because the body doesn't waste anything. It is all recycled and it is all reused within your body. So once you pass this 24-hour window, you will arrive to these 48 and 72 hours where you have a peak flux. And this is the maximum autophagy regeneration. This is the mitochondrial recycling, mitophagy. That is the other, let's say, name for this process. And what this means is that you are now depleting some of your mitochondria that might be defective or need to be, let's say, cleaned, detoxified, and your immune system will be resetted. What does this mean? When you reset your immune system, you allow the immune cells to be new again, to start creating more immunity against viral diseases and many other diseases that you can catch in everyday situations. So, next, what is happening and what happens in the brain? Because this is really important for people that want to have this cognitive expansion. Well, you will have an upgrade in your brain. The neurobiological upgrade, extending fasting from 48 to 60, 72 hours, triggers 200 to 400% surge in brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is the BDNF. This BDNF is promoting intense neurogenesis and synaptic plasticity. How would you will arrive to these 48 hours or 72? Well, it has to be done probably every 3 months, and you will have to follow a strict protocol and surveillance. And also, you need to consult with your physician if you are taking any kind of additional medications. So it's not something that you should do by yourself or just because you listen to one of these episodes or to other kind of podcasts. So what happens in the microbiome? Well, there is a microbiome synergy with your brain. Fasting also resets the gut, and there is microencapsulated probiotics surviving gastric pH 2, which is extremely acid, that can be deployed during the refeeding to optimize the estrobolome. What is this? Well, in lay terms, let's say, what you are doing is that it's just like as if you were having a cleaning of all your microbiome, which are your microbial agents, microbial bacteria, viruses, fungus that you have in your intestine, and you deplete all of that population that you have, and you renew the population of these bacteria, fungus, and viruses sometimes also. And you create a new environment that is going to sustain your health for longer periods of time, that is going to give you also the production of much better amounts of neurotransmitters, such as serotonin, such as dopamine, such as oxytocin. Many of these neurotransmitters are being produced also in this microbiome. So next, what is happening in your hormones? Well, next comes the endocrine divide, and there is a response to the energetic stress that your body is being subjected to. So in the male physiology, we are more resilient in terms that we are a flat line. We are a linear response toward fasting. That's why many men, when they start introducing fasting into their lives, they lose weight very quickly. And that's just because the metabolism of men is just linear. There is no, let's say, disruption of hormones. The HPA, the HPG axis, the hypothalamic pituitary and gonadal axis remains stable under this caloric deficit. This means that your male hormones are just fine. So static protocols like this 16-8 or the OMAD can be applied consistently without hormonal downregulation. What does this mean? Well, this means that whether you follow this 16 protocol or you just have one meal a day, well, that's good for you as a man. But if you have this disruption that is depicted in the graphic on the right, which illustrates the female sensitive physiology, then what is happening is not going to do good for your hormones. Evolutionary conservation mode has been um, able to introduce these extremely sensitive pathways to protect females. So the HPA and the HPG axis are highly sensitive to energy deficits. Why? Because this, um, let's say, pattern of hormones needs a lot of energy to be regulated. Aggressive fasting disrupts this pulsation that it needs to be in. For a woman to be regulated, it needs to be in these phases because they are not linear. They have a different rhythm, and they also are governed by the rhythms of the moon and this 28-day cycle, which every woman is different, and every woman should be able to track what is the cycle, which can be from 28 to 30 or 31 days. So when you introduce an aggressive fasting protocol, starting, let's say, with 16 hours or 18 hours, and you go fast to the 24 hours, well, this is going to disrupt your whole hormonal health, and it's going to bring you down really quickly. So it will start affecting the release of several hormones, and it's going to start affecting your hypothalamus, so your memory is going to be affected. So applying static male-centric fasting protocols to a dynamic female rhythm or endocrine system directly induces biological burnout in the body and in the mind. So that's why females are scared of these fasting protocols, because they have maybe tried them just because they listen something, or because some irresponsible, let's say, influencer is giving you these directions. You follow them, and then you fall into this disruption of your hormones. But this is not the way it has to be. There is a science to do that. So, what is happening in the female fasting paradox? The cortisol cascade, which is triggered by this aggressive fasting, which can be a rigid protocol of 20 hours of fasting and just a 4 hours of window, so just having one meal, it's going to disrupt a lot. So there is a hypercortisolemic state. That means that your cortisol is extremely high, and this is where your stress is just to the roof. So what is doing this to your hormones? Well, to start with, progesterone suppression, high cortisol switches off the production, leading to anxiety, leading to sleep disruption, leading to estrogen dominance. So you will have mood swings. Thyroid downregulation is reduced also conversion of T4 to active T3, which are thyroid hormones, and then increase reverse T3, which results in a slow basal metabolic rate. Translated, what this means is that your thyroid is going to start being confused by the amount of cortisol that you have, and start lowering the thyroid, let's say, fragments of your hormones that need to be released, so that your female hormones are regulated, and you will start having these problems with many of your hormones, and your whole body will be a chaos. Then you will abort this fasting protocol, but you will start gaining weight now because your hormones are completely disrupted. And finally, what is happening also? Well, there is an insulin paradox. So when you are under this amount of stress because you started this protocol thinking that you could do men fasting protocol, well, that will stress induce the gluconeogenesis that leads to insulin resistance and weight gain despite the caloric restriction. So instead of losing weight, you are going to gain weight at the end because you completely missignal your insulin sensitive receptors, because it is not the same as I showed you in the graphic of the men that are stable linear and the women that are just, let's say, pulsatile rhythm. No? So now, what is happening in the clinical PCOS and what is happening in these protocols? Well, in the clinical exception, the PCOS and the early time restricted windows that you can start implementing in your life, what is going to happen is that you are going to start allowing your body to have much more energy in terms of the amount of nutrients that you will have. So how do you stabilize your hormones once you have implemented these protocols? And something is happening with the images, so let's just listen to what I'm going to explain you, and hopefully the images will return so that I can show you what is happening. So when you start returning your mechanism and these exceptions to the rule when you apply the fasting protocol for women, the mechanism is that for women with, for example, polycystic ovarian syndrome, the PCOS, underlying hyperinsulinemia drives severe endocrine dysfunction. And there is a lot of women that are suffering from this syndrome. So the intervention is to have an early time restricted eating, which is called ETRE. And that aligns the fasting window with earlier circadian rhythms to optimize insulin sensitivity. So what this is doing is trying to adapt your body to your nature, your women nature that is oscillating between your hormones, and also the oscillation of the day, because you have this daylight that is stimulating the insulin sensitivity. So you take advantage of this, you have your meals within that window, and it's a lot easier for your body to regulate insulin through the night. So that is going to help you to regulate your insulin sensitive mechanism. Now, what is happening in the case of the cycle of, since in this cycle framework? Well, there are 4 phases that women should start doing and should start performing. Phase 1 is called the power. So this phase starts from day 1 to day 10 of their cycle. As I mentioned, each woman is different and each woman should be able to track her cycle. So when this phase is implemented, low hormones, cortisol forgiving, start with a fasting window that is between 16 and 24 hours. And the ketogenic focus to maximize fat oxidation. So this phase 1, between days 1 and 10, is the, let's say, most extreme that women can withstand in their cycle. And this phase is just these 10 days, day 1 to day 10. Phase 2, it is called the manifestation phase, days 11 to days 15. There is a peak in estrogen and testosterone. So the fasting period should be between 12 to 13 hours maximum. Focus your meals on fiber and cruciferous vegetables to assist hepatic estrogen clearance. So what this means is that between this window, you will be more sensitive to the, let's say, the disruption of your windows. So this is where you have to be very careful to just have these 3 meals again. So you will switch, let's say, from 2 meals in the phase 1 to 3 meals in the phase 2, so that you allow your body to have this fasting window reduced. Then in phase 3, power 2, day 16 to 19, so just 3 days post ovulation, there is a hormone dip, and you can return your fast to 16 hours or 18 hours maximum. So this is also another power phase 2. And finally, days 20 to 28 or 20 to 30 or 20 to 31, depends on the cycle, progesterone rise requires higher blood glucose, so no fasting. Focus on smart carbs and magnesium to prevent hormonal crashes. What are the smart carbs? Well, vegetables, fruits, and certain kind of fruits. You can just search that in Google with the glycemic index of the fruits and use the fruits that have a lower sugar. So this is going to help you to be replenished, to start the cycle again, and to start doing again this kind of protocol. So this is what is happening between your cycles and your hormones. What is the bioenergetics of refeeding? So how do I start breaking the fast in, let's say, for women, because they are the ones that are going to start doing these cycles? Well, the first bite, breaking a fast violently, shifts the body from a ketogenic state to a glucose utilization phase. So you have a metabolic shock. The danger of high glycemic carbs, refined grains, sugars, or high sugar fruit triggers massive glucose excursions, endothelial dysfunction, oxidative stress, and secondary cravings driven by these rapid crashings. So it has to be paused. It has to be, let's say, soft, the return to eating again without the fasting period. So the gentle re-entry to start having again your meals in the, let's say, without the fast, there is an order transition, and this order transition has to be followed by controlled refeeding that prevents the bottlenecks at the electron transport chains. So what does this mean? This means that when you start loading your body with glucose, you are going to do it with broths, with a salad probably, and be careful here, because you cannot have too much dressings, you cannot have too much fruits that have high glycemic index, and you should be able to start doing this low glycemic index in your salads as well. And then probably adding these nuts and also almonds that are going to help to restore this glucose release in a long-term fashion, let's say, and that will mitigate the postprandial inflammation. So you won't feel inflamed or bloated after your meal, because you did a gentle re-entry. And finally, the last advice and the last strategy that I'm going to speak about here is the use of your curves of glucose, and how are you going to sequence the, let's say, the introduction of your carbs once you perform this fasting experience and this fasting period. So what you are going to do is that you are going to start reintroducing your sugars with extreme careful, so that you can have the 10-minute rule. Consume fiber, protein, egg whites, or fat strictly 10 minutes before any carbohydrate. So start with the protein and the fiber. This physically buffers your gastric emptying and blunts the spike of glucose. So by allowing yourself to have a lower peak of glucose, you will have a much better response. Step 2, postprandial movement. Engage in 15 to 40 minutes of light activity immediately following the refeed. So this will intercept the glucose load that is going up, and then you start doing exercise. So it will be intercepted here, and you will start using the glucose that you already consume and lowering much faster. So that is what is going to happen with the curve or the peak of glucose, because you are introducing exercise, but it's a light exercise. It's not stressful, so it's not going to release adrenaline or cortisol, and it's not going to counteract the effect of insulin. And the 24-hour rules for extended fast has to be break, as I mentioned, with bone broth to gently resupply electrolytes and amino acids without taxing the digestive tract. So having an electrolyte beverage with that first meal after the 24-hour fasting period, it's going to help a lot to start giving the proper signals to your metabolism so that it reactivates all of your hormones and it doesn't create a high peak of sugar, and then you will have a crash, of course. So I hope that with this information you can realize that many times we are doing it wrong, this protocol of intermittent fasting, and we shouldn't follow what everyone is just saying just because it's a trend. We should research more, or we should contact and be helped by an expert. So if you have more questions or you want me to design you a specific protocol for you, well, you just consult my website, www.davidortegab.com, and then you will find these consultation exploration sessions where I can help you to start your healing process in this protocol of intermittent fasting. Thank you very much for paying attention. Have a wonderful day. And if you like the episode, if you think that it resonates with you, if you think that it can help a lot of women or men that also want to implement these protocols, start sharing, please, this podcast, and subscribe to my channels and to my social media. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and we will listen to each other in our next episode. Bye.